Disclaimer: The Minority Report podcast by Mike V. Minor. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are mine and mine only and do not reflect those of any affiliated individuals, organizations, or employers. This content is for entertainment and informational purposes only, so listen with an open mind. And if you don't agree, that's cool too.
You ever notice America loves you the most right up until you open your mouth? It's wild. You can be the perfect employee, the beloved neighbor, the community success story, the pride of your mama's group chat. But the second you have an opinion, somebody somewhere goes, "Oh, who told the token he could speak or she could speak?" And that's really what this whole episode is about. Tokenism. Not the cute corporate brochure version, not the "we value diversity" sticker on the website, right? I'm talking about the kind where you're only welcome as long as you stay in the frame somebody else designed. Recently, we've watched Charlie Kirk supporters cry out for empathy for his kids after he spent years turning whole communities into memes. We watched DEI go from a conversation to a character, to all these minorities must have cheated their way into their profession. Now, suddenly, a black pilot isn't competing with applicants, he's competing with your narrative. We're seeing powerful black people, Diddy, Letitia James, Chauncey Billups, become symbols, not individuals. And once you become a symbol in America, you're no longer a person. You're a lesson, a warning, a headline, a "see, I told you so." We've seen kids barely tall enough to reach the sink treated like they were 28 with priors. Whole neighborhoods judged for stats without context. We're so busy playing spot the criminal, we forget to spot the child. Folks out here talking about repealing the 19th Amendment and civil rights, like women weren't holding this country together, right? Like black people weren't fighting World War II with y'all. All meanwhile, men were outside reinventing the concept of failure. Like finally having protections for minorities, not just black folk, is a handicap. Somehow I ended up the token centrist, the flavor packet they sprinkle on the algorithm to make chaos taste like conversation. You ever been in a room where you think you're there to talk and they look at you like you're just there to balance the lighting? So, yeah, tonight's episode is about tokens, how they're chosen, how they're used, and how quickly they're thrown away the moment they stop performing. But more importantly, it's about how we stop letting people tokenize us at all, because I'm not auditioning to be anybody's symbol today. Not the lefts, not the rights, and definitely not the algorithms. I'm here to talk like a human being, not a placeholder with a post. I go by the name of Mike B. Minor, and this here is episode 9 of the Minority Report. It's December, and I can't believe it's the end of the year, man. I can't believe it. Like it is hard to process that this is the end of the year. Just time just feels like it's moving so much more faster. Ever since COVID, man, I feel like time just doesn't stop speeding by. I feel like it's just, and I'm getting older now, so maybe that's part of it. But yeah, it is what it is. So we're closing out this year. Thanksgiving was wonderful for me. I hope that everybody else had a great Thanksgiving. And my condolences to those who've lost someone. And these holidays serve as a constant reminder that there's a missing soul at that table. So yeah, my heart goes out to you guys, but I hope you did enjoy your holidays. Um, I found out that I'm hosting Christmas this year. Not that most people care. What I'm just saying is it's a big moment for me, because I've always thought like when I am in a position. Really, it was when I buy my house. I haven't bought my house yet, but I said when I'm in a position, I want to host. You know, one of the holidays for my family. And so now I'm doing that. And I'm just thankful to be there. Thank God. So I want to thank all my new followers and the folks who have allowed me to participate in their live panels. I'm looking forward to improving the numbers and engagement as well as the subjects. I believe I have a little bit over 400 followers currently on TikTok, and I have less than 100. I think it's like 92 or 93 right now currently on YouTube. Now, of course, I want them to be bigger, But I also want to be grateful. And, like I said earlier in another episode, I want this to serve as a placeholder. Because as this thing gets bigger, I want to be able to go back to these episodes and say, hey, you know what? I remember when I only had this many, and be able to play it and show you guys that I was still appreciative of the growth. I was appreciative of the few that I have. So if and when I'm blessed with many more, you guys will see that this was not, this is not fake love, right? I truly do appreciate you guys, right? And a lot of podcasters don't go out here and explain this. This stuff is hard. It's so hard to be consistent, So as I've said before, and I'm gonna say this again, shout out to all my fellow podcasters, all my people who go live, all the people who put out content, whether you're doing it in this format or you're just a live creator or whatever. I don't know how the heck I keep this going. All right. So here we are. We're doing this. This is going to be a shorter episode. Let's get into these headlines. People wanted empathy for Charlie Kirk's kids watching him unalive on TV, right? But he built his brand turning other people into memes. Sure, DEI got clumsy in some places. Some companies absolutely ran diversity like a checklist, right? But the backlash didn't stop at the clumsy stuff. It made every black professional look suspicious. The average person doesn't know DEI. They only know the TikTok version. And that version turns every black professional into a potential token. And Charlie helped create that shortcut. All right. The right weaponizes it, the left romanticizes it, and neither side actually explains it. All right. So now a black pilot isn't competing against other applicants, he's competing with your narrative. That's the entire problem. Let's talk about Diddy, right? Now, it's a crazy transition, but follow me. Okay. Let's talk about this with context, right? Not conspiracy threads and not Twitter hot takes, all right? Here's what we know. Diddy was charged with the whole list of things: racketeering, sex trafficking, transporting people across state lines. But the jury acquitted him of the biggest and most explosive charges. What did stick were two Mann Act violations, a law from 1910 that makes it a federal crime to cross state lines for prostitution or immoral purposes. All right, and here's where people start debating fairness. Even though he was acquitted of the trafficking charges, the judge can still consider that the conduct that he was acquitted of. They can still consider that when deciding the sentence because of something called acquitted conduct. All right, it sounds illegal, but it's not. It's a controversial legal practice. You should look it up. But federal judges do this all the time. Now, let's peel back a little bit more. Who prosecuted him? Okay. Was it the Democrats? Was it the Republicans? Was it the liberals? Was it the conservatives? Let's talk about this, right? Because this matters for people who assume this was some racially motivated witch hunt, right? The case was brought by the Southern District of New York, which is led by Damian Williams, the first black U.S. attorney in that district's history. He's a Biden appointee. The lead trial prosecutor was Maureen Comey, a white woman. And yes, she is the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, the same James Comey who pissed off both Republicans and Democrats at different points in his career. All right. Let me also point this out. Maureen is no longer there. She got fired by Trump. And supposedly, I believe Damian Williams is now resigning, or he's being pushed out. This was not a MAGA DA trying to fry a celebrity. Okay. It wasn't a woke prosecutor trying to make a statement. All right. It was a racially mixed, politically complicated team, which tells you this case was driven more by institutional momentum than partisan targeting. Okay. Now, let's talk about the Mann Act. Okay. Because the law is not normal. It does have history. All right. And most of that history is ugly. Right. One of the first most notable times that they used the Mann Act was in 1913 when they used it to convict Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion, for taking his consenting white girlfriend across state lines. It wasn't about trafficking. It was about punishing a black man America couldn't control. In 1959, they used it on Chuck Berry when nothing else would stick, okay? Shoot, even in 1960, they tried it on a young Charles Manson years before when he was just a small time pimp getting locked up for moving women around, all right? Those charges were eventually dropped. But the point is that the law has always been a flexible tool for prosecutors. Okay. The Mann Act is basically the government's, in case of emergency, break glass law. If they can't convict you of what they think you did, they convict you of what they can technically prove. And some people are like, well, if you're, innocent, why are you tripping? Okay. Let me explain why. Because if crossing a state line with someone you're involved with and some money gets exchanged, right? If some money just changes hands or whatever, and that can be interpreted as immoral purposes, there are a lot of people, regular people, not just celebrities, living one interstate trip away from a federal case. Because remember, civilians don't bring criminal cases. The prosecutors do. This is done by government officials. So if you have any skepticism of big government or government overreach, you should be concerned, okay? Now, before anybody thinks that I'm defending Diddy, all right, let me be crystal clear, all right? The video from with him assaulting Cassie in the hotel, disgusting. It was evil, and there is no excuse for that. I said that before. I am not sitting here trying to defend this man's character at all. But here's the legal part that people forget. That assault is outside the criminal statute of limitations, so prosecutors cannot charge him for it today. Cassie filed a civil case under New York's Adult Survivors Act, a special 1-year window for old abuse cases, and they settled it within 24 hours. Okay. Reporters say she received somewhere between like $20 million, and then she got another $10 million from the hotel for suppressing the footage. So the justice system did respond just through civil court and not criminal court. And by the way, just for context, for some of my Republican friends and MAGA friends out there, that Cassie lawsuit that came through the Adult Survivor Act is the same thing that dragged Trump back into court. That's that civil law, right? That's not the federal case we're talking about here. Totally separate lanes. But that was a civil law. So when you turn around and say, oh, they made that just for Trump, well, they used it against Diddy. So maybe they made it just for Diddy. I don't know, man. It's just understand this law had more targets than Trump. Anyways, getting back to it. This is where things get complicated, right? Two things can be true at the same time. Diddy absolutely did hurt people, right? Also, the government is still using a 1910 morality law, a law with a long track record of being used on black men and other prominent people that they can't convict of something bigger, to make them a symbol. And once a black man becomes a symbol, he stops being treated like an individual and starts being treated like a case study. That's the real danger here. Not just what the law did to Diddy, but what the law was designed to do in the first place. And if they can use the Mann Act on someone with his money, his lawyers, and his influence, there are a lot of folks listening right now who have no idea how close they are to being a headline too. Now let's talk about Chauncey Billups, because that one slid under the radar unless you actually read the indictment. This wasn't a violence case or a trafficking case, right? Billups got swept up into a 31-person federal poker indictment tied to an alleged high-stakes gambling ring with organized crime connections. And according to prosecutors, he wasn't the mastermind. He was just a celebrity token, the name you put in the room to make rich people feel safe, losing money at a table that just might have been rigged, right? And here's the wild part. Out of all the 31 people, he was the only name blasted across the headlines. When it's a white collar ring, the public doesn't get everyone's mugshot. But when it's a black athlete, suddenly it becomes a cultural indictment. And they put him up against, oh, these people were rigging games or this person blew a game, whatever. That's what they put it against, right? Billups might be guilty, or he might just be guilty of knowing the wrong people, aka guilty by association. But the narrative around him is doing way more than the actual charges. So it sounds different now, but it sounds like it works. I just want to say this, guys. We got to pay attention to this, okay? Things like this, very important. Okay, let's get into And We Ball, right? It's been a minute since I've done one of these, and at first it was just because there really wasn't much to talk about. Then, like, the episode started getting long, and then it was like it felt like the segment was starting to distract from the flow of the show, so I really wasn't doing it. But this episode, it felt right to bring it back. All right, the Raiders, we suck. Okay, I said it. We suck. Still my team, still Raider Nation, but we suck. Okay, right now we suck. There's no nice way around it. I'm still riding with him. I'm not watching the games no more. Actually, I'm not gonna watch the games no more. All right, but I'm saving the full suffering recap for the end of the season once the dust settles. But the Lakers, they're looking good, man. I'm happy with what I'm seeing. I'm not sold that DeAndre Ayton is the missing piece. So unless he takes a real leap, I don't really see that shifting anything really. I think we're good, and we'll just go as far as we can get. We could win it all. I'm not saying we can't, but obviously we're a very offensive minded team. We don't really have much defense in our starting five, at least. Okay. But I want to talk about LeBron, right? And this is really the reason why I brought this up. We spend hours debating GOAT conversations, Jordan versus LeBron, right? But we don't really spend enough time appreciating who LeBron has been off the court. No scandals, no arrests, no mistresses. One wife who's also the mother of all his children. No dark chapters from documentaries, okay? Just a black man who became the first active player billionaire, built schools, built businesses, and raised his family and still kept his name clean. That's huge, right? And he's a black man. And before y'all go into this, all right, I say this all the time. I am pro black. I don't care what nobody says about it. Do I care about everybody else? Absolutely. And I try my best to be fair, but that doesn't change. I am proud to be a black man, and I will not sit here and only point at all the things that we do wrong. I'm going to point at the things we do right. The mass media finds a way to downplay all of his accomplishments, right? We're talking about LeBron. They'll bring up Bronny. They'll question his business moves. They'll criticize him leaving organizations. But when it's Tom Brady, we skip right over the personal drama and make a couple roast jokes and go right back to celebrating the mogul. I mean, like, think about it. Like, there's like one thing that we really heard a lot of bad stuff about, and that was Deflategate. And even still, they didn't put that all on Tom Brady. They was like, oh, this was a Patriot organization situation. The most that we really heard about all the quote unquote negative things going on with Tom Brady was at his roast. And they all laughed about it and they got on. Jordan, we uplift him, but we never skip the gambling chapters. That's the tokenism I'm talking about. Who we let be legendary clean cut businessmen and who we make explain themselves. I'm not going to go too far into it. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I just thought it should be said. Let's get into all about the Benjamins, right? You ever notice how America loves tokenizing people, but it also tokenizes states, workers, and entire economies? And somehow the check always gets sent to the same folks, but not the credit. Okay? Take donor states, you know, California, New York, New Jersey. These are three places that send more money to the federal government than they get back. Okay. But let a politician from one of the taker states get on TV and suddenly they're the model of fiscal discipline. Those are the ultra conservatives, the fiscal hawks. Yes, cost of living is higher in those states that I mentioned, the three states I mentioned. So, of course, they generate more revenue in theory, right? But still doesn't explain why the loudest anti big government states survive off the very thing they complain about. Okay? Corporations cutting DEI budgets like it's the new trend, right? What they're really saying is we'll keep that one black VP on the brochure, but we're not budgeting for structural change. Okay? Were DEIs and rollouts sometimes sloppy? Absolutely. Did most corporations do the bare minimum anyway? Also, yes. Meanwhile, the everyday worker is the real token in this economy. We praise essential workers, but won't pay them essential wages. We say skilled labor is vital until the bill comes. We love saying small businesses are the backbone, but we let the biggest corporations pay the smallest tax rates. Let me also say this. I read this report and also heard something too where they were saying that, yes, we're seeing record highs of the stock market, but you're also seeing the category that's losing the most jobs are small businesses. Small businesses left and right are closing. So just because our stock market is high, just because GDP is so high, that doesn't change the fact that we are losing small businesses. And if they are the backbone of our economy, right? If they are who we want to see, whatever the case is, you got to realize the stock market exchange does not represent the small businesses. The small businesses are not on the stock market. Okay. America doesn't just tokenize people, it tokenizes entire groups, states, industries, even the middle class. And the game is always the same. You do the work, they take the credit, and somehow they still call you the burden. You see how America tokenizes workers, states, and entire industries, right? And somehow the bill always lands in the same mailbox. But tokenism doesn't stop at the paycheck, it sneaks right into the living room. So let's talk Family Matters, where nostalgia meets reality and tradition meets a rent bill. People love talking about the traditional family like it was Mayberry with better plumbing, right? But when they say traditional, they don't mean values, they mean positions. Mom stuck at home, dad goes to work. Everything quiet, especially women. But quiet doesn't mean healthy. Quiet just means she couldn't leave. Back then, no fault divorce, no economic independence. Domestic abuse was just family business. And politically, she had as much to say as the houseplant. Now, look, I'm not saying every traditional home was a nightmare, right? Some families or many families were beautiful, but nostalgia is selective memory with good lighting. It edited out the parts that were ugly. Because if we're going to be honest, the traditional family didn't collapse because women got rights. It collapsed because one income stopped being enough. Now, I know a lot of people are going to try to debate this, but just follow me, right? Corporate greed killed that structure long before feminism got to it. Here's the line that might sting, right? If women in leadership make you feel less like a man, you weren't one to begin with. Leadership isn't a gender, it's a skill, it's a trait. And if America was built for everybody, then women joining politics wasn't a disruption, it was a correction. I don't want to hear about what was happening in the past or whatever the case is. That's a great point that you guys can make, but I'm making this point, all right? Leadership is a skill. People ask, would LGBTQ stuff even be happening if women weren't in politics? Maybe, maybe not. But progress always creates friction. Freedom is messy, and that's the cost. So, no, women didn't ruin anything. They just stopped being domestic tokens in a system built on independence. And funny thing about tradition, everybody loves it until they have to live like it again. Okay? I'm not saying that we shouldn't strive to get back to those traditional values, or quote unquote those foundational values or anything. All I am saying is let's please get rid of this stupid argument that they keep bringing up. Things were better in the past than they are right now. I'm so tired of that. I'm not saying that we cannot consider that, but we also need to put into context everything that happened along the way. If you have a problem with women not staying home, which I'm pretty sure the majority of women would love to stay home and deal with the home, right? They still want to go out, they still want to have a life of their own, but they would love to not have to work, right? And if you told women, hey, you know what? We're going to get married, we're going to have kids, and you don't have to worry about making a dime. I'm going to make sure that we live a very comfortable lifestyle. You just take care of home. I'm pretty sure the majority of, straight women who want a relationship would appreciate that, right? Not saying all women. Some women might be like, no, I want to go out there and get it on my own, whatever the case is. And that's their right. Who cares? But I'm pretty sure if given the option, there's so many people who want to do that. A blue collar job is now increasingly becoming not enough to support a regular household in, some places. Now, some places it will work, right? It goes both ways. And all I'm saying is stop putting all this on women who want to be independent and start putting this on corporations not want to pay money. Simple as that, right? See, families break when communities break, and you can't talk about structure inside the house if you ignore the pressure outside the door. So let's step out into the street for a minute and talk about the place where labels, stereotypes, and survival all collide. Let's talk about the village. You ever notice how tokenization starts early? Like before you're even old enough to spell society, society already got you figured out. Black kids get suspended more, policed more, and judged more, and treated like they're 28 when they're actually 10. Everybody else, they get a timeout and a juice box. Our kids get a threat assessment. Black kids get punished for things white kids get a snack for. That's how dehumanization starts. And once you dehumanize a child, it's real easy to tokenize the adult. Look, let's keep it 1,000, right? Black culture gets misinterpreted. People think hip hop is a criminal code, not cultural expression. They hear a bass line and think it's a crime scene. But also, we do, Black people, I'm speaking to you right now, we do glorify too much nonsense, okay? We uplift destructive art without demanding better. And we praise people once they get rich, but never examine the damage they caused on the way up. We let turkey or back to school drives replace real investment. You can't rap about killing everybody on your block, then get mad when Karen crosses the street. I'm not saying she's right. I'm saying she's reacting. All right. Now, back to everybody else. Let's go full disclaimer. All right. I looked up cities with the top murder rates. Guess where they were? It's St. Louis, Baltimore, and New Orleans. And this is based off of FBI data from 2024, by the way. That's something that helps support a lot of detractors' favorite stat, right? Which is 13% of the population commits 50% of the crime. Newsflash. No, they don't. 13% of the population gets 50% of the rest. Arrests are not crime. Arrests are attention. Arrests are policing. We also have the highest exoneration rate. You didn't know that. But anyways, here's the crazy part. You ever notice how the most police neighborhoods have the most crime and the least police neighborhoods magically have the least crime? I know some people are saying, well, you don't need as many police if you have less crime. Well, here's the argument I'm trying to make, right? It's like when you stop looking for trouble, trouble disappears. It's not a crime map, it's a surveillance map. Okay. All I'm saying, right, with that whole thing, so that people don't misconstrue, is just because the richer areas have, less police, that means that there's less crime going on. No, I'm not saying that. Just because they have less police does not mean that less crimes are going on. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe they have just as many crimes as we have in the hood, but just in a different form. Okay, they might not be having murders and robbings and stuff like that, which makes sense because it's a very well known fact that poverty is a huge driver of crime. But their crimes might be domestic abuse or it might be other white collar crimes. It's so many other things that if you're looking for something, you're gonna probably find something, right? That's all I'm saying. Okay. I want to flip the logic, all right? What would happen if we sent the bad teachers to the rich schools, the ones where the average family could afford tutors, therapists, private programs, and paid those teachers less, right? That way we had more money to send what we consider the good teachers to the poor schools, and we paid them more for their struggle, right? What if poor schools got more of a government investment to compete with the wealthy ones that have large and lucrative booster clubs? Those poor schools could then have more counselors, more art, more music, more mentorship, more computers, more science labs, more safety. What if buses actually drop kids off at their houses instead of just taking them to the bus stop? Or at the very least, what if these bus stops had security, not to police them, just to protect them? Because if people are trying to figure out what point I'm trying to make, there's a lot of people in the hood who are afraid to walk from the bus stop because of affiliations from their families or just from, regular crime. What if you actually had some sort of protection? Maybe a police officer were patrolling or waiting right there. So when these kids got off the bus, guess what? They weren't getting jumped by other gang members, you know? Or people wouldn't even want to commit crimes because no who willingly goes and commits a crime and they know the police officer is right there. It doesn't happen. It's a attraction. Why don't poor kids get architecture tracks? Why don't they get pre-med tracks? Why don't they get engineering pipelines? Why is the majority of the opportunity in poor neighborhoods connected to blue-collar work, jail, or probation? And what if we change how we give support? America loves talking about work requirements for benefits. But what if, just what if, we talked about achievement requirements? right? 2.5 GPA, SNAP bonus. Strong attendance, Section 8 assistant boost. Consistent progress, higher child tax credit. Yeah, you know what's crazy? Like, we live in a country that rewards success and not progress. And maybe that's why progress is so hard, because people only feel support after they win, never while they're trying. Never true support. Let me put it like that. Okay? We've never rewarded improvement. We've only punished struggle. Let me give you another example. Lawyers, rich criminals get elegant justice. Poor criminals get speed dating with the public defender. And before you go into it and say, well, they shouldn't be criminals, some people don't be criminals. Some people made a little mistake. You know what I mean? They might have committed a crime, might have not. Sometimes it's, guilty with association. There's so many different ways, but they don't have that money, all right? What if we incentivize law firms to take more real pro bono cases? Okay. Tax credits, credits toward bar requirements, public recognition, something that makes elite lawyers want to represent poor folks. If half the hood had Beyonce's lawyer, they'd be home in time for dinner, y'all. America doesn't just have a crime problem, it has a representation problem. El Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, Mexico. Yeah, the murder rates are high. And before you use those numbers to fear immigrants, those numbers actually explain why they're running here. When you say, why don't they stop in Mexico? Hey, they have high murder rates too. They're running here because we don't have nowhere close to their numbers. Okay. If your neighborhood was 40 times more dangerous than Chicago, you'd leave too. And not because you want to start crime over here, but because you're trying to get away from crime back there. Jesus Christ. Sometimes you guys be so dumb when you guys use these arguments. These points I'm going to give you, it's not us versus them. This is hypocrisy versus reality. Serial killers, mostly white men. Mass shooters that are not, gang related, large majority white. And by gang, that doesn't just mean black gangs, that means mafia too. Anyways, domestic terrorists, overwhelmingly white. Child molesters, majority white offenders, okay? Mafias, they got meetings, all right? Black people got SWAT teams. Crack got prison. Opioids got therapy. When white people get hooked on drugs, we give them sympathy. When black people get hooked on drugs, we give them sentences. Don't tell me black culture is the only problem. The real problem is what America chooses to care about. What it polices, what it forgives, what it exaggerates, who it exonerates, who it protects, who it ignores, who gets to be an individual, and who gets turned into a symbol. And if you only show up to quote statistics when it's time to shame black people, but disappear when injustice hits us, then you're not racist. You're just comfortable. I'm getting to the end of this episode, and I said a lot of things. It was short, but I do believe I made my point. I hope this resonates. I didn't want this to be a super black versus white episode or whatever, but I have at many times done many episodes that have set the record straight about black downfalls, right? And I'm still going to continue to talk about that. I am trying my best to raise issues on both sides, right? I am not absolving black people of what they have done or what they lack doing, right? I am not absolving that. But I'm so tired of getting on these lives and white people try to tell me about my race as if I don't know what my race goes through, as if I can't speak up or explain some of the things, right? Like we don't have a voice. I hate that, right? This year it's been rough, y'all. It's been a rough year for me. Like it's been a beautiful year. I've seen a lot of progress. It's been a rough year for me, right? I've seen a lot of setbacks and stuff like that, man. Personal, love life, spiritual. I've seen a lot of progress, and I've had my moments. Financial, I've seen my growth. I've also seen my setbacks. I've gone through a lot, man. But I thank God that I'm still here. I'm still pushing forward, and I'm starting to be a little bit more meticulous at my mistakes and starting to fix a lot of these things, right? I'm a huge believer that when you're really good at one thing, you're really bad at something else, right? And sometimes people try to find balance, which I do try to find balance. But there's some things where I just really believe, like, you know what? I'm really bad at this, but I'm just gonna be worse at this because this makes me better over here, right? And I'm learning now, like, how to kind of like tip the scales a little bit more. Sometimes you ain't gotta be just as bad at certain things. I got a lot of things coming up. I am trying to start a few businesses. I have some big announcements to make. Hopefully, by the top of next year or somewhere within the first 3 months of next year, I should have some big announcements. For anybody that was watching me early, I was telling you guys about my comic that I was dropping. The frequency comic, I right now is looking like it's completely done. We had a big setback. I'll talk more about it later, but it's done. It's going to be dropping. I'm going to restart the whole process of dropping the entire comic at the top of this year. I promise you guys, I'm going to get that out along with the music that goes along with it. It's super cool what I'm trying to do, and hopefully, you guys can appreciate what I'm trying to do with that. All right. I want to end this episode really on a very very reflective note. It is going to be what it's going to be, but I really want to like leave y'all with something, right? Here's the thing about being a token, right? It always starts off feeling like a compliment. Hey, we picked you. You're different. You're one of the good ones. And then one day, they replace you with somebody louder, messier, cheaper, or easier to control. They never choose you. And suddenly you realize they never chose you, they chose the space you filled. Here's the twist. Tokenism only works when you agree to the contract, when you keep your head down, when you let people reduce you to a symbol, when you start believing you're the exception, not the example. The moment you speak your truth, the moment you complicate the narrative, the moment you remind people you're not just the black guy or the woman or the immigrant or the moderate or the gay person or the one that makes the panel look balanced, the whole illusion breaks. And that's the stitch in this episode. Tokens are useful, tokens are visible, but tokens are never valued. I want us to stop being tokens in politics, in families, in debates, in corporations, in community stats. I want us to be people again, complicated, flawed, growing. Allowed to mess up without being a headline. Allowed to succeed without being a mascot. Remember, once you see tokenism, you can't unsee it. And once you refuse it, you become very, very hard to throw away because now you're unique. I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, y'all. Thank you to every panelist who challenged me. Thank you. Every live host who gave me space. Thank you. Every platform that carried this voice farther than I could have imagined, even if you don't know who I am or care about who I am. Thank you. Okay. And to y'all, the community, the people who are watching this, for growing with me in public. Thank you. All right. That's not easy. And you didn't have to stay. You didn't have to watch this. You didn't have to give me the likes, the comments, or whatever the case is. Even if you don't like what I got to say, even if you're detracted, or whatever the case is, I still thank you for just noticing me. Okay. And since it's the holidays, I also want to say, Merry Christmas or, whatever your culture is. I don't want to be disrespectful, but happy holidays. All right. Hold your people close. Forgive somebody if you can. And if you're cooking this year, send me a plate. Lastly, if I don't put out the year recap, I'll see y'all in the new year. So happy New Year's to you too, right? I go by the name of Mike B. Minor. This is the Minority Report, and the mic has been dropped.